Always a pleasure to talk hoops with this man, Brian Geltzeiler. Of course, he's our insider here at 120 Sports, and check him out at Sirius XM NBA radio host, as always. And Brian, big day in Indiana today because Larry Bird, Larry Legend, bye-bye, saying goodbye to the Pacers. He's going to step down as their executive there. What'd you make of this move with Larry saying goodbye to the Pacers?
Well, Larry Bird this offseason, Dave, was in a very interesting situation. He's got two choices, and neither of those two choices are all that appetizing or palatable. One choice is to go ahead and trade Paul George, and there's no way you can get equal value in the open market for a player like Paul George. Even the fact he's under contract for another year, whoever gets him is going to have to extend him. Or you can make the decision not to pay Paul George and have to sign him to a 5-year extension in excess of $200 million. Those were really Larry Bird's only two choices. And walking away at this point, and I think a lot of it had to do with maybe some of George's comments to the media constantly, and that I think today's player and the players over the years have changed. And I think Larry Bird's having a difficult time dealing with all of this. He made a decision vis-a-vis Frank Vogel that I didn't agree with at the time. I felt like Vogel had this team along the right track, and they were always competitive with Frank Vogel. This whole up-tempo thing, and then hired Nate McMillan, who was a coach who really never did up-tempo. And, you know, his 12 years as a coach, 10 of those years, he was in the bottom 5 in pace. His team just didn't run, and Larry brought him in to run. So I think all of these kind of decisions that culminated in what was a very dispirited, underachieving team for the talent he brought in. And I think Larry Bird, maybe not in terms of, I think some of it being his own job performance and some of it being the guys he brought in and expected more out of. I think he was kind of disgusted, and disgusted leads to maybe being a little bit burnt out when you look at what goes into the job. And I don't think Larry Bird's a guy that would bend to public criticism in any way. I don't think that bothers him. But I think this whole storm together, and with George with the constant complaining and knowing that you have to accommodate him, and knowing once he trades George, it could be a long, painful rebuild. If Bird was going to walk away, now may be the optimal time, Dave.
Is there any chance you think he takes another exec job somewhere else in the NBA? Was this somewhere maybe that there's greener pastures out there for Larry Bird?
I would seriously doubt it. I mean, if the Boston job ever became available at one point, would it be something you think Larry Bird would have to look at? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't see him like resurfacing in Sacramento or something. One thing that you have to keep in mind about Larry Bird and the Indiana Pacers, you know, buried in that news item was Larry staying on as a consultant. And Donnie Walsh, who had Larry Bird's job for quite the long time, he was there, and he ended up doing what? Staying on as a consultant. He left, went to the Knicks, came back as a guy in the front office who's consulting. So, you know, Herb Simon and the Indiana Pacers has a habit of engendering a tremendous amount of loyalty from his people towards himself and the franchise. And Larry's in that. He's like woven into that whole thing. So I would really be surprised, short of the Boston job coming available, which if I'm Larry, I'd really, because of the history involved and his connection to that city and that franchise, would have to seriously look at. Short of that job coming available, I don't see Larry surfacing anywhere else.
All right. Sorry, Sacramento. You're going to have to hold off on trying to get your Larry Legend. Check him out.
Larry Bird's.
Exactly, Geltsy. Brian Geltzeiler. Check him out on Sirius XM Radio.